It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day to ask Siri, what is a vine? Where should we dine? It's a great day for an MMORPG, a great day for some Call of Duty. My friends are online. Can I have some more time? I have all these thousands of BitTorrents in my download queue. I've always wanted to take a selfie with you, so let's get the most of this online play. Since we're just kids, let's hope we're not prey. Would you be mine? My parents don't mind. Won't you help me, Siri? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please, won't you help me, Siri?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Oh, thank you. So I'm glad I didn't have a wardrobe malfunction there. That could have been awkward. This is Raised by Siri, a course on digital parenting, and I will be asking you to have the two-screen experience during this event. So while I'm talking to you, you guys will see stuff on the screen. I'll also be live tweeting to the hashtag iParent. So I would love for you to follow along. There's some questions I'll be asking. Any secret resources or videos, they'll be coming at you as I actually get to those slides, I hope. So a little bit about me first. Before I was the Director of Innovation and Digital Learning at Eanes ISD, I was a first grade teacher. Can you see me in the picture? I'm right there. It's kind of hard to miss. And a lot of times with technology in my classroom, when I look back at this picture real quick, and I see the year, first of all, first of the 21st century, right? 2001, 2002, technology, completely different. These kids are now sophomores in college, which is kind of crazy. And you think about what technology looked like in that classroom. It looked very much like this. And we had 3 computers in the back. We had, I think, 2 projectors in the entire building. And we would wheel those things out, and they were like aircraft carriers. And they'd whirl up and make a ton of sound, and I'd have to put it in the very far back of the room to see any image bigger than like this. It was great, right? Technology was everywhere, but it wasn't really in a lot of ways. And now we've transitioned quite a bit. So now I'm in a school district that's one-to-one iPads. We have 8,000 kids, K to 12. Each one of them has an iPad. We're in our 4th year of one-to-one. And we've seen a lot of things that are different, most of which this kind of blurred line between both home and school. And so for me, I think a lot about my own kids. And this is the point of the slideshow, the presentation where I have to show my kids. So here we go. Graduating class of 2007, 2020, or 2027, 29, and 2031. Oh, yes, that's Ima, Yura, and Vegas Hooker. What? Oh, no. Better text my wife and tell her. No, Sophia, Lauren, and Caroline there. And I think about, especially Caroline, my youngest, the class of 2031. What's it going to look like when she walks out the doors of Westlake High School in 2031? What is the world going to look like? Thinking about my own kids, I just showed you those kids back in 2001, those first graders, how much the world has changed just since then. And so a lot of this talk is predicated on that concept of the fact that the world is changing. Of course, we all agree with that, but also that the lines are blurred. Just by show of hands, how many of you work from home? Do some work at home? Wow, most of the people in the room. How many of you, and you could admit this now, when you're at work, do some stuff for home? Yeah, look, about the same, right? Blurred lines. Same thing with school and home. There's a lot of taking place online. There's a lot taking place in the schools, and we need to make sure that we take advantage of these concepts, but mostly that we work with parents to help kind of create an iVillage, I call it, because we're a lot stronger because of it. And so the first question is this. What are some signs of the 21st century family? Call it out. What are some things you see nowadays that you probably didn't see way back when? Everybody's looking at a screen. Well, someone else said game systems are different. Oh, a lot different. Like here's my favorite, right? Nintendo. Roku, yes. Also different. Instantaneous access. And we've seen a lot of change in our own district where we see this kind of concept of how technology is used at home is a perception of how it could be used at school or should be used at school. So you see pictures like this quite a bit, right? You're out at a restaurant, It's kind of a digital pacifier in a lot of ways. So here, let's give this. Now, this kid here is Mozart, apparently, because he's like playing the piano. That's a really good parent there. You know, it's not just a game they're creating. But there's also this concept that, and my boss is here, and he's told me this story before. He calls it the pass-back generation. And I asked him, what do you mean by pass-back generation? It's because as you're driving down the road, kids acting up, what do? You pass back your device. It's a digital pacifier in a lot of ways. So getting that concept in schools has been tricky for us and a challenge because there was still that mindset that these are just toys, these are just games, and that's all they're kind of good for. This is called 21st century tan lines. And it was shared to me by a friend on Facebook. And I thought, at first I looked at that and I said, are those longhorns upside? No, oh, yes. So someone over here mentioned they're always on a screen. Yeah, even when they're at the beach, they're on a screen, right? And now parenting's changed so much that in the old days, you know, it's like you made them do their chores so they could go outside and play. Well, now you make them do their chores so they can actually get on the Wi-Fi. This is the new thing, right? I've seen these kind of making the rounds lately. This is a very tech-savvy parent, by the way, because you have to change the Wi-Fi password every day. But sure, empty the dishwasher, walk the dog, yes, then we'll give you the Wi-Fi code. So the 21st century family has shifted a little bit, but then I also asked this question, are parents really doing a good job of modeling this in new dynamic? What do you think? Are we doing a good job of modeling it? Some of us are. As I walk around and go to there's a children's museum here in Austin called the Thinkery, and I remember sitting in this playroom with a bunch of 3-year-old kids. I had my 3-year-old, and I looked, and there was this bench, and 6 parents were sitting on it. What were they all doing? They're all on their phones doing something else. The kids were, like one kid actually threw up. It was pretty impressive. And the parent didn't even flinch. I was just totally shocked. So a lot of times with parents, let's see for ourselves, you know, we just need to see the signs. And we're running so fast, we may not notice the signs, like this picture here. Do you see what that sign says? Warning. Electric fence. Yeah, be careful of some of that. And then you've got sometimes where parents are just so into their work or into their games that they decide to kind of multitask a little bit here. You know, another parenting fail in some sense. Of course, we need to be connected all the time, so maybe even after we've given birth to our own baby, we say, hey, here's your baby. Oh, great, hold on a second. I got to send out a tweet. Wait just a minute. And then this one got me because I looked at it for a second, and I thought, oh, it's a kid's birthday. You see the candle going out, and then you see Dad back there who's just taking a half a second of his time to clap for the kid who just turned 4 from his game that he's playing online. So I'm wondering, as parents, are we really modeling this? My own parents have struggled with this. My parents just recently retired. They just got their first smartphone a couple years ago, and I had to kind of get the concept of texting with them and let them figure out that it's not always instantaneous. Here's an example of a text my dad sent me. Yeah, Dad, thanks a lot. That does me a lot of good. Yes, and my mom sent me this one, which was, what does IDK, LY, and TTYL mean? I said, I don't know. Love you. Talk to you later. Okay, I'll go ask your sister. Yeah. This isn't really my parents, by the way. I would hate to, someone will tweet at Shirley Taco and tell her, hey, your son's talking about you again. If you have 5 minutes to kill, look at parent text messages online. It's just hilarious. There's a lot of these great ones out there. And then I've seen this recently from BuzzFeed, which is just clever, and it's kind of their take on what parents have done now with the disruption of technology in their own lives and how they're trying to adapt quickly to their kids. Check this out.
Okay, good, Mom. So proud of you.
What? Dad, it has nothing to do with you.
So, admit it. Any parents in the room want to admit to being those parents? Yeah, a little awkward. Do we have some in the front? Yes. With a 6, 3, and 2-year-old, I don't know where I'll be when they become teenagers. I don't know what kind of technology will be out there, but I will probably be that parent who's still trying to kind of stay hip to the lingo in a lot of ways. So here's a question I get a lot, like how much different are kids these days? I mean, they still like to do a lot of the same things, right? Or not. They have these new screens that are around them. They call it the fourth screen. That's what Nokia calls it. So is there a big difference? And I thought rather than me going and asking kids what this was like, I thought I should experience it too. And actually, Casey Mitchell, who's here in the crowd, kind of inspired me to do this. She was a middle school ed tech at one of our middle schools who decided to be a student for a day. And then she tracked everything that she did. And I thought, I need to do this too. So I went to Westlake High School one day in December. I put on a hoodie. I tried to act like a high school kid. And it was very depressing because every high school kid said, yeah, you don't look anything like a high school kid. I'm like, oh, I'm too old. They're like, no, you're too fat. Oh. No, they didn't say that. I was like, really? They said you're too big. And I was like, thank you. That's a nice way. Yes, okay. So the one interesting thing about the day was I got to experience what it was like to be a student in everyday life. With all these new screens, with all this technology, what does it look like for them? This was the schedule I followed. It's a little blurry, but you can kind of get the gist of it. And let me tell you, it's a lot of content. I know some of our high school teachers are here now, and they're the ones delivering it as quick as they can and getting the kids to work with it and learn with it. And by the end of the day, I'll admit it, I wanted to go home and just play video games. And I know now why kids kind of go through that, like just kind of unplug. But what surprised me was this. During transition times of classes, I was expecting to see, 75 to 100% of kids on their devices, just sucked in, doing whatever. And to be honest, hardly any of them were. They were actually still doing the things that you and I did when we were in high school. They were talking to friends. They were communicating with each other. A lot of social interaction. They were planning after things after school, what they were going to be doing. So I love to see that our kids are still doing that. And the other thing is, in the classrooms where technology wasn't being used, the kids were very responsible toward the teacher. Even in one class, it was a math teacher, and he was a sub, which, by the way, he didn't know what I was doing. So he saw me in the back of the class. He's like, okay, here's your math quiz for the day. And I said, yeah, great, I'm going to take the quiz with you. But the kids were still doing a great job of being respectful of him. You'd see a couple of kids thinking about getting out their phones and texting, but I'm thinking because I was in the room, they didn't do it. But for the most part, very respectful of our teachers. The one thing that got me more than anything was how uncomfortable the desks are for our kids nowadays. These all-in-one desks, have you guys sat in these for a whole day? Do any of you have a desk like this in your office and that's what you sit in? No. In fact, who has the most comfortable chair in an entire school district? Principals, superintendents, school board members who sit in those chairs maybe 2 times a month. Right? The most comfortable chairs exist for those people when really we should be thinking about what our kids are doing. Because by the end of the day, my back hurt and I was exhausted, cramming into these little desks and trying to turn. Here I'm trying to have a conversation with the students behind me, and it's just uncomfortable to even turn in that. So we need to start thinking also about how mobile the world is for our kids in the school as well as at home. So I hear this a lot from parents too. Why can't it just be like the good old days? Everything was so much better way back when. Well, let's look and see. Sometimes change happens, right? So this lovely, beautiful piece of furniture, and I call it furniture because it really was furniture back in the 1930s and 40s. It would sit in the middle of the house, and it would emanate this beautiful, rich sound. And kids and parents, everyone would gather around it and listen to whatever they had to listen to. It was like one show. They would listen to it at the same time. And at 7 o'clock, they would listen to Little Orphan Annie, and it was great, and it was powerful. But it was disrupted by this. In the 1950s, this little Motorola transistor radio came out, and the sound quality on this was just awful. It was terrible. It sounded tinny, but every kid wanted one. Why? Different, experience, mobile, personal. Sound familiar? Same kind of concept. And then because of this, really in the 1950s, what else took off around that same time in music? Rock and roll, Elvis, all of that, because all of a sudden they had a little bit of choice. And now we look at this, of course, moving on a little bit more. 1950s come around, we have the television experience. How many channels were there back then? One. Back then there was one. It was on or off. That's right. Eventually we got to, I think, 3, and then this other thing, Fox, came around in the late 1980s. So 3 channels, everyone gathers around and watches the one-screen experience. Well, again, this also is disrupted by change. And there was innovative companies at the time that said, why are we making people watch things at this set time when they could just get a tape and rent it later? This isn't a great picture because of what it says. But here's a great example of how a company tried to stay ahead of the times and then got very stagnant, right? Blockbuster was there. It was like, and in fact, I love still telling the story to my kids about, man, back in my day, I had to drive 4 miles to a video store, And sometimes it was there, and sometimes the video wasn't there. And don't let me talk to you about late fees, because that was crazy. You know, and it was snowing usually, even though. But then you think about what's happening now with technology and how on-demand everything is. Of course, Blockbuster is now since out of business because all of these services have come up. Again, just like in the classroom, there's a lot more need to have this kind of on-demand experience. I didn't even list the #1 video provider in the world on here. What is it? YouTube, right? And the biggest difference between YouTube and those other 5 companies I just showed you was we are actually now the ones publishing the content as well. It's not just a provider giving it to us. So we're now the creators, we're now the enablers of that content. And all of this, of course, you can carry right in the palm of your hand. Much like this device. Again, personalized mobile choice, always there. So we're gonna go back a little bit further in time. This is an 1889 newspaper, Smithsonian, and one of the things they talked about was this new disruptive technology that was going to just destroy the world, and it was called the telephone. The telephone is the most dangerous of all because it enters every dwelling. Its interminable network of wires is a perpetual menace to life and property. In its best performance, it's only a convenience. It was never a necessity. Well, the funny thing is this is actually somewhat prophetic because nowadays kids, as I ask them, telephone is probably like the 5th or 6th most use of their actual device. They use it for other things besides telephone. But it's funny to see how even back then, a new thing came along and people thought it's a menace to society. Let's avoid it rather than embrace it. And if I go back even further than that, here's a quote. If men learn this, it will implant forgetfulness in their souls. They will cease to exercise memory because they rely on that which is written. This was Socrates in 370 BC. And he was convinced that the written word would destroy all knowledge because you couldn't have argument and discourse. All of a sudden, he said, even in this, the funny thing is Plato wrote all this, which is how we now know it. So Plato didn't follow directions. But he even said in the Plato writings, you could see, he actually said at one point that he imagined a world where the young people would walk around with their noses in these notepads, or he didn't call them that, but little books where they just write. Similar to the things we're hearing nowadays, right? Kids are walking around with their noses in their screens. He thought this back in 370 BC. So as much as we think, could it be like the good old days, we know that it's always going to change. And so you have a couple of options, right? You can either avoid the change or you can embrace it in a lot of ways. So what are some things, and I'll call this out to the crowd now, what are some things that our parents didn't have to worry about that parents today do have to worry about? Selfies. Thanks, Charlie. Yeah, Mark, thanks. Selfies, what else? Cyberbullies, right? Online. There's this kind of concept that you think if you lock your doors, lock your windows, your kid's gonna be safe. Well, there's one thing that you're forgetting to kind of keep an eye on, and that's that connection to the outside world, which is a great thing, but can also be a bad thing, right? Whenever technology has been invented, there's usually a lot of good uses for it, and then somebody always comes up with a bad use for it. When the camera came out, you know, taking pictures, the first photos on record were what? Pornographic in a lot of ways. People used it. It's a new technology. They're going to use it in a different way. So even though the technology is there, people find ways to use it in different ways. It's not the technology that's a harmful thing. It's how people use it. So these are kind of the big 3 that I've seen just in talking with our own parents. You know, social media, that idea of bullying, trolling, what that concept looks like, gaming, being addicted to games, being an online gamer all the time. And then kind of, someone mentioned earlier, having to face in a screen all the time. There's a lot of concern about these 3 things, and they've kind of bubbled up to the top whenever we've talked to our parents in our community. So I'll kind of hit each one of these one at a time. And for social media, you know, this is the early text messages back in the day, right? Do you remember these things? I could never fold that piece of paper the right way. And it was great because, you know, like if you try to flick it to a friend and then and then the teacher would intercept it and like, oh, now you got to read it out to the class. And then if you think about, you know, this is kind of an early iteration of Facebook, right? We had lockers, and you would post things on people's walls in the lockers. And if you had privacy settings, you had your photos hidden behind the privacy settings, right? Yeah, early Facebook. So social media has actually been around for quite a while. But a question I get a lot is, you know, what social media do our kids use? And I thought, you know what? Rather than me tell you, Siri's got an answer. Maybe some advice, some audience members can help. On the catwalk. What does that mean? Oh, wait a minute. That's right. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the social media catwalk. Ready? Here we go. First up, we have Pinterest, ladies and gentlemen. And here comes Pinterest. Look at her. She's got her camera. She's all ready to go. Lovely. Pinterest. 80% of users online are 80% of Pinterest users are female, as a matter of fact. Our girls love Pinterest for posting fashion ideas. Next up, we have Twitter. Twitter's great. I can only explain it. Yes, she's mastered the art of the hashtag. I can only use 140 characters to explain it, so there we go. All right. Next up, we have Facebook. Yes, that's right. Oh, everybody look, it's your grandma, and she's on Facebook. She's sharing photos of her trip, the places she went. It's lovely. Facebook. And because grandma and parents got on Facebook, what did kids do? They left. And they went here to Instagram. Here he comes. It's Instagram, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I see he's got his phone ready. What are you going to do? Oh, sweet. Selfies. Nice. I forgot to make my duck face. Oh, here he's going to do another one. Yeah, so the kids jumped to Instagram. Well, guess what? We started getting on Instagram. So now what are the kids going to do? They moved to Snapchat. That's right. Keep an eye on him, ladies and gentlemen, because he's going to disappear in about 10 seconds. It's Where'd he go? Snapchat. That's right. The ability to take photos quickly and then have them disappear in 10 seconds with the idea that they're temporary. Temporary. And then this latest one, Yik Yak, which just came out just a little while ago. It's a way to be anonymous, so we don't know who she is. She could be somebody else. She could be cyberbullying. She could be making fun of you. She can post anything she wants within a 1.5 mile radius. Those are our social media models. Can you write them back up on stage? Let's have a hand line up there. Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Take some photos, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, the paparazzi's here, or a selfie would be good. Take a bow. Thank you all so much. Yes, all right. Good job, models. You can keep the shirts. That's part of the prize. So, of course, you know, no awards presentation would be without if we didn't remember those that we've left behind. So now I have, for social media, in memoriam. These are the apps that came by a little ahead of their time. Apps like classmates.com. You know, the idea was great. You had a yearbook where you could connect with others, have this platform where you could have posts. Sounds very familiar, doesn't it? It was a little ahead of its time. A social networking site like Delicious, a great concept. It was usurped by a photo-driven social networking site we now know as Pinterest. Yes, and she's very excited. Friendster. I was one of the first people on Friendster in 2002. I thought this thing is going to change the world. And it was just a little bit ahead of its time because it did not have a mobile interface, which made it a little clunky. And when the smartphones came out, another company you may have heard of with 1.3 billion users took over. And then my last one, which is still around, by the way. I'm not dead yet. MySpace. Anybody have a MySpace account? Does anyone still have a MySpace account? Have you checked it lately? It's kind of scary what's happened to MySpace. Yeah, it's still music driven, but it's, again, no longer with us. So I thought I would share those. Those are fun. When we're thinking with social media with our kids, though, one of the concepts, and Lisa Johnson, who's here in the front row, she's, by the way, Tech Chef for You, the Pinterest model, who has, I think, 20,000 Pinterest followers. I think she's pinning right now as I'm talking to her, as a matter of fact. She shared this with me, which is a great graphic from Common Sense Media. And these are the kind of conversations we need to start having with our kids that we haven't started yet, either in school or at home. And it's this idea that when you take photos, so much can be done with that photo. Everybody's got a camera on them now. In fact, this Apple Watch is also I just want to see who's going to look up. It's not an Apple Watch. It's cool, but no, it's not an Apple Watch. It also will have cameras in it. So now we're going to start seeing wearables. Remember Google Glass? You could take photos of people and they wouldn't even know it. So they need to start asking themselves the question, having this conversation with kids, is it okay? Would my friends think it's okay for me to post this? And then the one I've heard a lot of people mention to me is it okay if my grandmother saw this, right? Facebook. It would be okay if grandma Facebook saw this, you know, because it's something that you want to make sure you're careful of before you post it, because it could be there for a long time. The phrase digital footprint has been around for more than about 8 years now, as far as I can tell. And I think I've heard it called something else lately. They called it a digital tattoo because it's a little more permanent. Well, here's the interesting thing. Just in the last year, there are now companies that are coming out. They're called digital scrubbers. And what they'll do is you can pay them a certain amount of money, and they will scrub your digital profile for you and clean it up and basically present you to the world. Kind of scary to think about, but it's in some ways a very smart service too for the kid who's maybe done something they shouldn't have done online. And as a matter of fact, I found this video. It was very interesting. This is a true video. It's actually, I went into the future. This is 2040, and it's about the presidential election in 2040. Let's check it out.
Welcome back to the War for the White House bunker. A troubling new report from the Shuttleworth Institute shows that due to Facebook, every potential candidate for the 2040 presidential race, no matter how smart or accomplished, is now completely unelectable. I'm standing in the 2012 Democrat with Jason Copeland. Jason, walk us through this.
Yeah, we're looking at really a political crisis here. I mean, this is an alarming new study. Take a look at one of the candidates that the study points out. This is Trevor Kaufman. He's out of Houston, Texas. High school class president, spends 10 hours a week volunteering, got a full scholarship to Duke University.
He sounds like leadership potential.
Well, but take a look at his Facebook photo album, and you can see him smoking marijuana out of a lacrosse stick case his roommate converted into a 6-foot-tall bong they called Goliath.
Okay, that will definitely come back to haunt him if he runs for office.
Most definitely.
Of course, again, the funny thing about this video is that it probably won't be on Facebook. It'll be on something else. Although, after talking with some of our own kids, they still use Facebook, and they actually see it more of how we use, I think, a service called LinkedIn. How many of you are on LinkedIn? Most of us in the room probably. They see Facebook as that kind of bridge for them. It's more of a professional service. So they're very careful about what they put on there now. And they love the groups. From when I've talked to teens, they said they love having the group feature in Facebook because they can have little groups to talk just amongst their friends. And so these 2 points are the 2 points I try to drive home with parents every day. I try to drive home with teachers too. It's that there's no such thing as temporary or anonymous. Snapchat, perfect example. Do you remember back in December of 2015, there was a guy that actually hacked the Snapchat server? He was able to get in and hack it, right? And he was able to download 4.6 million users' accounts. My 17-year-old niece, I thought this would be a great opportunity to me to teach her a life lesson. So she comes over and I said, Jordan, I want to talk to you about something. She's like, oh yeah, what is it? I go, I can see your Snapchat account. Her face turned pale. I was like, what are you worried about? She's like, well, a friend of mine sent me a picture that probably, and I was like, okay, well look. And even though that snapchatdb.info website is now gone, you guys know that you can use archive.org to go back in time on the internet and still get to that site. And guess what you can still do? You can still download all 4.6 million user accounts. So even though it's been gone, they had a court order against it, you can still access that user information. So it's not necessarily temporary. And then anonymous, Yik Yak, this is a big one. So in the fall of this last year, a University of Georgia student decided it'd be funny to get on Yik Yak and say, hey, there's a bomb in the library. And Yik Yak, of course, in order to use it, you have to turn on location services. So the police contacted Yik Yak. They said, yeah, this is the kid's phone. And he said, oh, I'm sorry, it was a joke. So again, no such thing as anonymous, no such thing as temporary when talking with our kids. So gaming. I get this one a lot too. What if all my kid wants to do is play games all the time? Now, all the time is bad, but there is some research that says some game playing could actually be good. And I think this is the kind of crowd that's ready for that kind of thought. I know, and sometimes when you're talking to parents, they may say, yeah, any type of game is terrible. That's not always true. There are some bad ones out there, but there's other things and other research out there that actually shows that it could be good. Now, for me, collaborative gaming when I was a kid meant I invited a friend over with an extra joystick, right? And all of a sudden, we were playing together. It was a collaborative game. You know, it's shifted now. It's all online. And, you know, this model, which was an early gaming model in my own classroom, in fact, some of the games we played you may have remembered. Do you remember Oregon Trail? It's an app now, of course. Another one that we played a lot, Rearer Rabbit, Type Defender, and then this one, which was a great game. Remember, because it took history and it gamified it. It had you learn and kind of ask questions and really get you probing and thinking. But the difference between these games and the way these kids are set up is what? They aren't really being very collaborative. They aren't really creating anything. They're kind of just plugged in and going. So now it's evolved quite a bit. And a good friend of mine, Rashawn Richards, who was here last year presenting, shared this thing called Westrocraft, which is a place where over 1,500 people around the world have gone online, and they've taken Minecraft, and they've recreated to scale the whole Game of Thrones universe. So here's the wall, here's the city this is the Red Keep, and they've actually spent thousands and thousands of hours, apparently in their parents' basements, no, not really, creating this amazing world, and it's collaborative, and it's 22 different languages, and they've had to connect and discuss who's going to design which part. Pretty impressive, the fact that you can now do all this just online. And it doesn't stop there, because our kids can also have some value in this. We had a Latin teacher, and I don't know if Natalie's in the room or not, I know she's here, who had an assignment for kids to use their Latin grammar to talk about a Roman bathhouse. And normally, you stand up in front of a room, you point out some things on a slide, the kid presents it that way. One student who was very much into Minecraft said, can I do something else? Can I take that and actually record it in Minecraft And you can kind of hear him a little bit, and you leave it turned down a little bit, but he's saying things in Latin. So as he's going through this, now he created this world. He spent much more time on this concept. And even though there was a lot of time spent on the structure, he had to memorize the words and the terminology as he was going through it and really put action to it. So it's not just, I'm going to memorize the words today, show up tomorrow, and present them. I mean, he did this over and over again and rehearsed it and did a screenshot of it. And when the teacher, and actually Lisa brought it to my attention, I said, that's incredible, that's great. Minecraft's blocked in the district. How is he doing that? We've since opened up a little bit with Minecraft EDU. But again, powerful ways to create and really taking that gaming structure and using it in a powerful way with creativity and innovation and problem solving. Now, we think of games a lot. We think of things like this, which, you know, any of you still have this app? It disappeared right out of the App Store for a little while. I think it's, in fact, I heard a story the other day that they were selling smartphones that had the app on it for more money than like $400 or $500 extra because it came with Flappy Bird on it, which is crazy. I mean, this is an app where the guy actually had to pull it out of the App Store because kids were addicted to it. They were playing it so much, not even kids, parents, adults. And they were texting him things like, or sending him messages like, you're evil, you're Satan, you know, because of this game. And it's just because they couldn't control kind of the idea behind it, the fact that maybe they need to pace their own lives a little bit, right? So not, again, too much gaming can be bad, but I think pulling this back to the positive side, all the different ways that games are good for the brain. This is another great graphic from Pixie Learning. And I just realized I don't think all my tweets are going out, but that's okay. I'll have to send all these out really fast at the end of the presentation. So this is a great graphic of just different ideas, different concepts that come along in gaming that can actually help the brain. And here's a couple of examples in the last month at our campus that we've had. So this is Barton Creek Elementary did a project where they were actually building Scratch in 3rd grade.
So the frog's gonna, here's the cheat. She's gonna get
this is me just discussing it with a 3rd grade girl who's created this game in about 2 weeks. Actually, I should say 2 one-hour periods over 2 weeks. That's all it was. It wasn't 2 full weeks. It was basically 2 hours she created this.
He's gonna be in for a surprise, isn't he? Now you might want to get out of the way. You might want to run away.
Then you may want to run away.
Yeah, because he's about to chase after you.
I cheated. I grabbed it with the mouse and moved it because I didn't want to get it killed. So it's like, wait a minute, what are you doing? In 3rd grade, I thought, when I saw this, I was like, this is incredible. Kids in 3rd grade are learning to code. It's almost like a foreign language. You know, they say it's better to learn foreign languages at an early age. I mean, teaching coding at an early age could be a very powerful tool for our own kids. As a matter of fact, I went to another one of our elementary schools, Cedar Creek Elementary, and saw kindergartners actually coding. And just in the first 3 seconds of this video, you're going to see a group of girls get so excited, it just warms my heart. So I'm going to play it.
Early coding in kindergarten.
It's a little bit of controlled chaos, admittedly. I mean, there was 2 kindergarten classes in there, all of them coding, some of them using laptops, some of them using iPads. They were working together to create games using things like Scratch Junior, Code.org for the Hour of Code. But again, thinking of games in a different way, thinking that no longer do they have to kind of sit back and be passive with the games, but now they can actually control them and design the games. So what are some good qualities or traits that gamers have? I'll call this out to the crowd. What are some good things that a gamer has in terms of what's a good trait? Problem solving, what did you say back there? Dealing with failure, very good. Like perseverance, right? Persistence, what else? Quick thinking? Spatial intelligence, good. Yeah, knowing your space is kind of in an abstract way, right? Collaboration. Strategy. They have to be somewhat organized, right? Concentration. My 7-year-old nephew who plays Minecraft, he will sit there and spend hours trying to get his, he has a little ramp, a car, I guess because it's a mine car, and he's trying to get it to jump and launch this certain way. And this is persistence and also concentration. He'll try it, 100 times, and he'll fail every time. And eventually he'll get it, and when he does, he moves on to the next thing. He celebrates it and then moves to the next thing and thinks, how much better can I make this? Kind of thinking along those lines. I've shared this graphic before, and Tracy Clark, and I don't think she's here, but she's shared this with me about a year ago. And what this represents is not things that gamers have, but it's a lot of the words that you just said. What this represents is when they interviewed, Forbes interviewed Fortune 500 companies and asked the CEOs, what are the qualities or traits you want in your employees? These are the words that came up over and over and over again. You know, words like perseverance, adaptable to change, handling criticism, kind of that failure idea and concept. You see these 4 C's that we've heard about a lot in education right here: creativity, communication, collaboration, and critical thinking. But it's much more than just that. It's all of these soft skills, and these are the kind of concepts that we're also trying to get across to our own kids, right? Not only at home, but also at school, because these are the traits that are going to carry them forward in life. You don't see on here math. You don't see on here Chromebook. You see lots of other things that can involve math and can involve technology, but it's not just about those things. It's about these soft skills, and I think this is an important one to point out. So a side note to this is also that third concept. So social media, gaming, big, but what about too much screen time? Should we worry about how much screen time kids are having? And I think there are some valid concerns here, right? So balance is the key to anything when it comes to screen time. Back in the 1950s, you saw this. And quite honestly, when people said you would go blind by staring at the TV too long, back then it actually happened. Because there was actually low levels of radiation that came off of these early models of televisions in the 1950s, that if you stared that close, your eyes would actually, your vision would start to actually become impaired. There's actually new research out now about action gamers, though it's fairly interesting, by Daphne, I always butcher her name, Bavelier. And she's got a great TED Talk about this, about your brain on video games, but also talking about what happens to action gamers and their vision. And it's not what you think. So an everyday non-action gamer, let's say, has perfect 20/20 vision, right? Don't play games, 20/20 vision, everything's good. What would you predict an action gamer who plays a regular amount, 15 to 20 hours tops a week, not a day, like over the course of a week, what would you think about their vision? It is better. It's actually a lot better. So the research she conducted showed that they actually had better vision in multiple different ways, not just from seeing things from a distance, but they could discern small text like you'd see on a medicine bottle a lot better than the average person, without a magnifier like we see in this picture. They could also do things like they could differentiate between different shades of gray. I'm not going to go there with a joke, but I just had it in my head, and I'm going to just stop right there. So some people, when they look at this picture, they see a blue and black dress. No, just joking. No. There's a different joke. They can actually see better in fog because they're able to see levels of gray better than we can because we're not regular action gamers. And if you've ever seen some of the gaming screens, some of these worlds that they're playing in are fairly dark, and they have to be able to see icons and little things kind of in the back of the room wherever they're walking in, like Warcraft or any of the MMORPGs. And screen time is another concept. So gaming is one part of it. So vision is something we've seen, again, with regular use is okay. Heavy use, we probably start to see some deterioration, by the way. The other big concept with screen time is this fact that we have a circadian rhythm inside our bodies. And this affects all of us, not just kids. But every time we see something that's bright, our minds think that it's sunlight. So we kind of reset our clock. So if right before you go to bed, you turn on your bathroom light and it's real bright, like this light right here, and you're brushing your teeth, your mind just resets. And it takes about 30 minutes on average to kind of have your brain slow down enough to where you can actually go to sleep. Well, the same is true with screens. A bright screen in your face will do the same thing. This is a great TED Talk by Russell Forster, who talks about the average levels of sleep that kids need. And actually, I'll point out something else on here. You look at the average amount of sleep that we get as adults in the night, 8 hours. How many of you in this room feel like, and honestly, feel like you get just enough sleep every day? You wake up. How many of you don't need an alarm clock to wake up? This always baffles me. Look at this. There's some of you raising your hand. What's your secret? Someone tell me their secret. You have them or you don't have them? Yes, that's true. Small children, mine, tend between 4:45 and about 5:15 is when they either like to throw up or wet their beds. So it's pretty good for me. What else? What's your secret? How are you able to just get enough sleep to where you naturally feel like you just wake up? Oh, so you have actual physical harm threatening you. So he said if the alarm clock goes off, his wife actually gets mad at him. So you're anticipating it. So in your mind, you're like, I got to wake up before the alarm clock. All right, we need to talk later. I feel bad. What else? Someone else said something over here. Go to bed early. Early being 6? Yeah. And you've gotten to where you found a natural rhythm. So you know if you go to bed at 10:30, you can wake up without any need for an alarm clock at 5, 6, whenever, right? Interesting. I kind of err on that bottom chart there, unfortunately. I'm about 5 hours, and that's, again, with little kids. but I sleep between 12 and 5 usually. So I've noticed a big difference in my own sleep. If I can get about 8 hours sleep, I feel a lot more creative and productive throughout the day, so it's something I've been trying to monitor. So again, this is a concept that's new to our kids in a lot of ways, and us, is taking technology into your room and then having that screen kind of keeping you awake all night is not necessarily a good thing. And like my wife likes to read ebooks on her iPad mini, so she kind of dims the screen a little, and that's okay, but I would still say if you can, start turning off the screen, start dimming lights about 30 minutes before you start going to bed. You find that you have a better sleep pattern, and your kids will have a better sleep pattern too. I mean, think about teenagers. They need 9 hours of sleep. That's why a lot of them sleep in until noon on Saturday, right, to catch up for all that sleep they're missing. Aren't all those screens a distraction? I hear this one a lot too. It's a lot of distraction to see all these things. You guys right now are on your screens, but you're sort of paying attention to me because I encourage you to do that. So is it a distraction? What can you do as a parent to kind of act out? Well, here's one. Wait, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Here's one parent's take on what to do about that distraction. Oops, I missed it. Let me go back. One more time. You are just going to keep, there we go.
Hey, Jake, you want to pass the salt, please?
What are you doing?
Dad.
Sorry, I must have been a little distracted. Pass the salt.
That actually won a Toronto Film Festival video short this last year in 2014. I thought it was great. I had to share that with you. So, yes, distraction is something that we always have to be concerned about, but I think a lot of times I always ask, let's reflect upon ourselves too. Like I showed you those pictures of the parents before. How much of this are we actually doing? How much of us are that parent who's at the Thinkery not really paying attention to their kid? At my last talk when I was here, I was dressed as a zombie, which is a whole nother story. But when I finished the talk, a parent came up to me and he said, I love the talk, thank you so much, we're very distracted digitally. And he told me a story. He goes, I have to tell you, he goes, in 2002, I was like the #2 user of a BlackBerry phone in the entire US. Like they had stats on this. He was on it all the time, punching those buttons. And he had a 10-year-old at the time. And he said, Halloween came around and the 10-year-old said, Dad, I've got an idea what I want for my costume. He said, what are you gonna be? And he says, well, I wanna dress up as a BlackBerry. And he's like, oh, that's great, I love BlackBerry. He's like, yeah, and she's like, well, why do you wanna dress up as a BlackBerry? And the son said the most profound, saddest thing. He said, so you'll pay attention to me. I know, it hurt my heart when he told me that. I was like, oh, the poor guy. And he said that was it. I mean, that was his moment. For me, it was, feeding my third child, Caroline, and I would sit there and have bottle in hand, and with my other hand, I decided I was gonna be on Twitter or checking scores or something like that. And I thought, there's something I'm missing here, and it's right in my arms. And so I had to kind of pull back a little bit myself and say, okay, I need to cut back on the distraction because I'm modeling the wrong behavior. So I get this a lot too. What will the future look like? We don't really know. And as parents, I think a lot of it is our job. We feel like we have to stay ahead of our kids, right? We got to figure out what the next new app is going to be. You'll drive yourself crazy trying to do that. I think as parents, our job is to kind of impart our wisdom on our kids. And you can actually work alongside your kids. So when they pull up Instagram, you say, hey, what is that? That's kind of cool. Let me see what it is. How does it work? Why would you post that picture? Why would you use Yik Yak? I mean, not in an accusatory tone, but just ask them the question and get kind of feedback from them about it. And then that's your chance to impart that wisdom as a parent because you'll never stay ahead of them. I think I will because I'm such a techie person. I know when those 3 girls become teenagers with the last name Hooker, I already feel bad for them, but that's a whole nother story. But I'm not gonna be able to stay ahead of what they're actually doing. So it is gonna be different. And it's interesting because you can actually go back in time and see what people thought the future would look like. This next photo is actually from an 1899 French artist who was asked, lots of artists in France at that time were asked to commission what they thought the future would look like in the year 2000. Here's one of the photos. This is what the house would look like. There would be this magic robotic sweeping device that could pick up everything. Looks familiar, right? This one was kind of fun. They thought there would be these big mobile restaurants that everyone would sit in and you could drive around town. Now, if any of you have been in Austin, you've probably seen this, a pub crawler. These are real. Like, you can sit in this and you just pedal your bike, and they actually is a bartender walking right down the middle of that. It's pretty crazy. And then this last one is pretty powerful to me, too. This was actually what they thought the classroom would look like in the year 2000. Interesting, right? First of all, a couple comments. I love the class size. 7 to 1, that's great. Second, if you're a female, I guess you weren't going to school in the year 2000. But again, this idea that we're going to just push this content into your brains, you're not actually going to be receiving or creating, you're going to be receiving it, but you're not going to be creating anything with it. And I think a lot of times where schools misstep is we think that if we just give them the device, we can just plug them right in too, right? And then all of a sudden, we're just going to put a textbook on there, and that's it. We're just going to kind of feed it into their brains. Much like that picture I showed you earlier of my 3 kids in the back of my 5th grade classroom with their headphones on, just kind of plugging into that knowledge. So where can parents go for good advice? And teachers, for that matter. Well, the good thing is there's this thing called the internet. Have you heard of it? By the way, if this is the first time I'm telling you this, I'm sorry, but not everything on the internet is real, okay? So a lot of times you'll get these mom bloggers that come out and say, here's a great way because I have kids. I'm one of those people that does that too, so I'm guilty of this. And I found this video, which was very interesting, from this mom blogger called, I think it's called Mom Magic.
Now, Rebecca runs a popular parenting blog called Mom Magic.
That's right. It's about the everyday parenting choices that could make a big difference on our children.
Rebecca, I read the blog a lot. My first question is, who the hell do you think you are telling me how to raise my kids?
You know, I have a degree in early childhood education, but my greatest education has been raising 3 beautiful kids of my own.
Okay, well, let's just jump right in and get this over with. I understand you have some great advice for how to get kids to do their chores.
I do. For every chore your child does, reward them with 10 extra minutes of TV time. I found it really gets them excited about helping out.
That's great advice from someone who's never met my kids.
Or mine. And Rebecca, just by looking at your smug face, I can tell you have some more advice for our viewers who I'm sure couldn't have raised their kids if you hadn't deigned to talk to us today.
That's right, Tracy. One of the greatest frustrations that parents have is noisiness.
Sure.
Well, if your kids are the loud and rambunctious type, I suggest setting up quiet zones throughout the house where your children know to keep it down.
Quiet zones, wow. Billionaires with giant houses full of rooms to set aside better listen up.
Now, and I find this incredible, Rebecca. While most parents would mind their own business, you decided to write a whole book telling people how to run their lives.
Well, I'm just really connected.
Obviously not real, and there's the next few parts I can't even share with you because they get a little bit vulgar. But I feel like there's this concept that we need to go to the internet and grab all this knowledge, much like this talk is about let's ask Siri for help, right? We think that's just going to be the easy way to do it. But really, we need to start having those conversations with each other. And a few of the things we've done at Eanes specifically is we've had talks where we've brought in experts to talk about what's internet safety and cyberbullying look like. You know, and these are things you probably are already doing in your campuses, I hope, pulling in parents to do this. But it's important to not be the one up at the front of the room like I've been doing this whole hour just saying this is what you should do. Have them have those conversations. Here's one that we did in the fall of 2013 where we actually brought in, down at the bottom there, we brought in a panel of different experts. We had parents from different backgrounds, different beliefs when it comes to political beliefs, some conservative, some liberal, what their thoughts were on technology. We had a professor from the University of Texas come in and have a panel and have them have the discussion. And then see what they're coming up with, because a lot of times they come up with some clever ideas that we hadn't even thought of as administrators in schools or teachers. This is one I did recently at Westridge Middle School, and you'll notice something here. I'm not standing anywhere near this group. They've lined up, and I'm having them actually have dialogue and kind of discourse about what they feel about social media. And I actually had them line up as the expert social media parent in the room and the non-expert. And then I had those experts pair up. So the non-expert met with the expert and have a discussion for 5 or 10 minutes about what does that look like? Why do you believe in it? Why do you think it's terrible? What are the differences? One other thing I'll offer to you is this, that we've started doing an online course called Digital Parenting 101. This is an iTunes U course. It's free, open to the world now. We have, I think, 113 students in there. I'm the professor, so yeah, you can send me a message and say, Professor Hooker, I have a question. Yeah, it'd be really funny. But again, this idea and this concept came from the fact that parents couldn't always meet at the night we had our parent night. They're like, well, I want to get these resources, but where do we have, I don't have an opportunity to do that. And so the discussions in here have been very powerful too. And it's open up to where you can actually see there's some, this is just a screenshot from, I guess this was a couple weeks ago in mid-February, where I took a screenshot of some of the things that are taking place in there. And we talk about gaming and social media, and there's a wealth of resources that I give out to this. Again, free course, there's quizzes, and if you want to take it and finish the course, you actually get a little certificate. But a lot of parents are just signing up just to get the knowledge and kind of keep abreast of like what's actually happening out there and what can they do as parents and what kind of discussions should they be having at home with their own kids. So you guys have been a great audience. We're down to the last 10 minutes, so I wanted to play a game with you. So if you could take out your phones, because like I said, two-screen experience, here we go. How many of you are familiar with Kahoot? I know I just was in a second, look at this. Is there someone from Kahoot here? Okay, you're not allowed to play. Sorry, no, no, joking, you can play. But then they actually donated some door prizes here. By the way, I have some beautiful door prizes that I'm about to show you. So this is actually a parent in our district that designed these digital citizenship posters, and she's donated all 8 of them right here. So I have 5 of these sets that you can take back to your schools. Big, giant posters she's donated, as well as t-shirts from Kahoot. So grab your phone, go to kahoot.it. I'm going to pull this screen over a little bit. I'm going to launch this. So go to kahoot.it, and in a second, you will see a code to join. There it is. Turn that down a little bit. There you go. So all you need to do is take out your phone, go to no wwws needed or .coms needed, go to kahoot.it, type in 696982, type in your name. And I'll go ahead and tell you, if those of you who are not familiar with Kahoot, it actually does self-monitoring. And the reason why I know this, because whenever I put in my name, it doesn't allow it. It doesn't like Mr. Hooker as a name. So yes, my own account was a little different. I did this, when did we do this, Casey? It was like early January, right? We did it with all middle school kids at lunchtime. We had them all bring their iPads in, 100 and something kids. We played Kahoot games about social media. And it was also very interesting to see kids try to break or bend the rules about the naming conventions there. They figured out they used dollar signs, they could say inappropriate words, it didn't work. Okay, cool. So I'll give you about another 5 seconds. These are going to be 6 questions on social media, digital parenting. I've given you some of the answers. If you've really been paying attention well, you'll have heard some of the answers for this, but if not, that's okay. So we're going to start now. And if you didn't get a chance, anyone need a second more that wants to play? Okay. Twitter. Of all people, Twitter. Come on. You should be the fastest one. All right. You ready? Okay. Got it. Oh, the number's at the bottom. Okay, are you ready? There are approximately how many users on Facebook? So here are the answers. Red, 500 million. Blue, 1 billion. Gold, 1.3 billion. Or green, 3 billion. Okay, most of our answers are in. And I should have warned you, you can't see if you never played Kahoot, you realize you can't see the answers on your phone or device. You have to look up at the screen. Very good. All right, 63. Pretty good job there. Let's move on to the next and see how we're doing. Ashley Pinkins, where are you? Right back there, Pickens? All right, good. Now you got a lot of pressure on you. Everyone knows where you are. Everyone look at her, and someone try to block the screen. Okay, here we go, next. How much minimum time before bed should you start to turn off the screens and dim lights? Red, 10 minutes. Blue, 30 minutes. Gold, 60 minutes. Green, 90 minutes. I guess that's yellow. I don't have to keep saying gold. And 100 and something people. That's great. That's the most Kahoots I've ever had. 30 minutes. That one I just said about 20 minutes ago, so hopefully you guys were paying attention at that point. Most of you were. The other 13 of you, I don't know what you were doing. Okay, Ashley is still there. Leslie, where's Leslie at? Where's your second place? Way in the back. Impressive. Okay, good. Here we go. Question 3. Oh, how many YouTube videos are viewed daily? Is it red, 40,000, blue, 4 million, yellow, 4 billion, or green, 5 million? This one was staggering to find out. That's a big hint. It's not 40,000. If you need a hint, if you're just waiting, if it's between that and 4 billion, I'll just tell you it's not 40,000. Yes, 4 billion, which is crazy because how many people are there in the world? Like 7 billion and some? So that means everybody, or at least every other person in the world is watching a YouTube video once a day. How many of you have used YouTube to actually help you do something, like learn how to look at, wow, almost 100%, 95%. I used it to help me fix a washing machine the other day. I didn't actually put YouTube on the washing machine, and no, I actually had to fix it, but yeah. Here we go. Oh no, what happened? Ashley, no. All right, where's Kevster? Oh, okay. Kevster's back there, very good. Here we go. Which app allows you to post videos to the internet? Is it red, Facebook, blue, Vine, yellow, Instagram, green, Google+? There could be more than one right answer. I forgot to tell you that. As a matter of fact, all of them were right. You all got one right. See there, hang in there. Yes, all of these actually now allow you to post videos. Instagram does it, Google Plus does it, Facebook, you know you can do that. And of course, Vine is the most common one because it's video-based, but they all actually allow you to do that. All right, we're down to just a few more, 3 to go. Whoops, I want to close out. Kevster's still there. Where's Amber? All right, in the back. True, false, this is going to be one of two choices. Things can be posted online that are not permanent, like Snapchat. Whoa. It's like someone's popping bubbles. I'll give you a hint. It's either true or false. if you're just flipping a coin, you may just have to click on something. I may or may not have mentioned this before. False. Even though you think it's temporary, there's always a record of everything on the internet. We need to make sure our kids know that for sure. Here we go. Kevster, still there? Sean M., where are you? All right, Sean, right back there, catching up. Amber, Melissa, you guys, and Cheryl, you still have a chance because top 5 will get prizes. Here we go. Question 6, 2 more to go. What is Facebook's default privacy setting? Red, is it public? Blue, private. Yellow, friends only. Green, only me. And the winner is public. By default, when you set up Facebook, it's always public. Just remember that. You guys, most of you already know that because I could tell 87 of you got it right. All right, the last one, this will be a tricky one. By the way, Kevster, good job. Sean, are still our top 5. You guys are right on top of things. Okay, no pressure, but just so you know, Kevster, they're like right behind you. So if you don't press your button super fast, someone go over there and just, no, I'm just joking. Don't distract them. Here we go, last one. What YouTube video has the most views? Green, red, Grumpy Cat. Blue, Gangnam Style. Yellow, Charlie Bit My Finger. Or green, Baby by some guy named Justin Bieber? How do you say that? Whoop, 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 whoop. Just a hint. It is, in fact, Gangnam Style. Over 1 billion views, and I'm convinced it's like 3 people just watching it over and over again. Okay, well, we don't need to see who won, so let's just move on. No, I'm just joking. Hey, there's our winners, Sean, Kevster, D. Nailing, come on down. JP, and then D-Bob. Let's give them a hand as they come on down. Claim your prizes. Snapchat won. You guys can see up in the front, in the back. Okay, good. First place, where's first place? Where's Sean? Right there. Here you go. Thank you again, Kahoot, and thank you, Sarah, for the lovely posters. You guys come on up and just pick one of these out. 2nd through 5th, they're pretty much all the same. And I hope you guys are all larges. If not, go see Kahoot, right? And you guys will exchange out the shirt. I'm just making her say yes. Okay, good. All right, so we're out of time, but I did want to kind of leave with this one kind of final message, and that is, as parents, as administrators, and as teachers, it's really easy to kind of be scared to change in a lot of ways and have that fear of embracing that change. I love this quote by H.P. Lovecraft because it's true. The oldest kind of fear is the fear of the unknown. And again, as a teacher, it's so much easier for me not to integrate technology because my life would just be simple. It's the way I've always done things. As an administrator, oh, let me tell you, all the hours I spend dealing with technical issues and problems with it, it'd be so much easier if I didn't have to deal with this. Parents, it's so much easier if we didn't have to have this disruptive change in our lives. Parents, teachers, administrators, we're forgetting the most important person. Who? Students, our kids. Go forth and be brave. Thank you.